Alrighty, so what's happened is we've completed all our refurbishment work on all our components. So what we're actually ready to do now is start to reassemble everything. So as you can see, I've actually grouped all my sub-assemblies together, and there's a reason for that, and it's to ensure that I haven't I'm not missing anything, and I am actually, because I'm missing the Kickstarter spring. I didn't grab that out of new stock, so I'll go over there and I'll grab a new Kickstarter spring. And that's about it. You can see all packages of different items over there, and over here in this tub, I'll just grab it. My clutch plates soaking in oil. Now they're soaking in 425 millilitres of oil, and what's the reason for that? Because this oil is going into the gearbox once the engine's assembled. So I'll actually put a plastic cover over that, something like Glad Wrap, or keep any debris or anything like that out, and just let my clutch plates soak for a while. Now the other thing you probably notice isn't here are the bearings, and they're actually in the freezer. So bearings are back in the freezer, just cooling down, and because the first job on the assembly list is to put the bearings and seals in. Alright, so we've got all our seals in, and our next job is to check the crankshaft end float. So before we do that, nice liberal coating of oil on all your seals and your crank. Clamp it together, and then we'll get a dial indicator on it and check our end float. So now we've got our cases bolted together. I've got a steel plate here that I've just bolted up to give them a magnetic base, something to grab hold of. When you're doing this, make sure you also got your crankcase dowels in to align your crankcases. So I've just a screwdriver and gently pull it across so it's all across one side, and now we'll lever across from the other side and see what we've got. So that is 0.38 of a millimetre. So because this dial indicator is in metric, so the end float that we're after in metric is 0.1 to 0.15 of a mil. So we're going to try and go slap bang in the middle of that, which is 0.12 of a mil. And so 0.38 minus 0.12 is 0.26 of a millimetre. So we've got to get 2.26 millimetre shims to shim this up. Now, because this is a D3 engine, double D, the service sheet says to actually shim it all on one side. So all the shims go on the left hand side. So we'll go and get some shims, we'll go and measure them up, fit them up, and then we'll do this all again. So we've picked up a shim, and it's 0.27. 0.26, 0.27. So we'll throw this shim in and we'll see how we go. So we've got our shim in, our dial indicator is on 0, and we'll just move it across and see what end float we've got. And we have 0.11 of a millimetre. So that's a bit over 4 thou, and the tolerance in thou is 4 to 6 thou. So we're right in the middle of the tolerance. So that's good. Right, so now that we've got the end float all sorted out, it's time to start putting the gearbox in. So we'll start by putting the detent ball and spring in, and then we'll put the selector mechanism in. Alright, we've got our gear selector mechanism in. We've tabbed over our lock tabs. So the next thing I do while it's here is just make sure it actually all works freely. And and everything looks all right before you go and, well, it's nicer to discover an issue now than it is when the engine's all bolted back together. All right, so now we're up to the point where we're getting ready to put sealant on to marry up our two crankcase halves. Now before I do that, I'll give all my sealing surfaces a really good clean with metho, and that's to ensure that there's no grease or oil or anything like that on my mating halves, to give my sealant the best possible opportunity to actually seal up. What sealant do I use? I use Loctite 515 or 518, but there's plenty of good stuff out there, and it's a bit of a personal preference for people. So there's things like 3Bond, good quality sealant. Permatech makes some good quality sealant. So the whole idea is just to have a good coating on it and make sure everything is nice and clean and ready to put together. Now I've just spotted something. I don't know whether you're going to be able to pick it up, but right over here, now I've just been clamping these cases up, and there's a tiny little shiny spot on a burr here where someone has driven a screwdriver in here to separate the cases. So I'm going to get a file and I'm just going to dress that little burr off, because it's nice and shiny, which leads me to believe that when I was clamping the cases together to check the end float, that this is an actual high spot. So I'm going to remove that. There's another little tiny one there where they've also tried to jam a screwdriver in. I obviously didn't pick these up on the inspection. They just didn't show up. But we'll just dress that off. Alright, so I've got my sealant on, and the big thing is this lip here, around here. I make sure I've got a really good bead sitting right up against that edge all the way around. This is one of the places where you can really lose crankcase compression really easily. So you've got this tiny little lip here that marries up into a recess around the other crankcase. So I just make sure I've got a full fillet of sealant all the way around that lip before I bolt them up together. Okay, now putting the crankcases together, I have a scriber on standby, and this is the reason why. So we'll get our two halves, and I'm looking through the main shaft coming through the shaft there. Now my lay shaft is off center, so I'm just going to pull it across. Still not quite there. There we go. Now you get to this point, just give your gearbox a bit of a turn. And that's it, we're home. So there is no need to go bashing it with a hammer or anything like that. Just give your gearbox a turn. That's why I don't put this cover plate on, so I can reach down in there and align that lay shaft through the bush. So we're ready to drop dowels in. Remember to put your dowels in first and then bolt these cases up. So kickstart quadrant and spring are now in, and it's time to put the clutch on.